radios and IFF off, codes removed before leaving aircraft check completed. Hi, I'm Captain Kathy Lasauce, a 141 pilot at Norton Air Force Base, and I'm your hostess for this issue of Air Force Now. This is one way the Air Force has to get you to a hospital for emergency or even routine treatment. But what happens if the treatment you need is at a hospital halfway across the country? Well, the Air Force has a way of getting you there, too.
Paris, 1870. The Prussians and French are engaged in a fierce, bloody battle. Amid the turmoil, the French launched 66 balloons, sending 160 sick and wounded to safety. This was the beginning. Since the early days of manned flight, military doctors have fought for an effective aeromedical evacuation system. And things have come a long way. Today, the C9 Nightingale is the primary aircraft for airlifting patients throughout the world. But its story doesn't begin on a runway or in the air. It begins when a military member or dependent or retiree needs specialized medical care. Since it's impractical to have every type of specialist at every medical facility, the Air Force has established 6 regional medical centers with top-notch specialists at each one. The 375th Aeromedical Airlift Wing, Scott Air Force Base, has European and Pacific-based squadrons which move patients by C9 to staging facilities where MAC C-141s bring them back to the States. All activity is monitored by the Wing's Patient Airlift Center at Scott.
The routine movement of patients in the United States begins with a phone call from the originating hospital to the patient reporting section. The patient information that is received is then transferred to one of the 6 patient status boards located in the Aeromedical Evacuation Control Center. The Medical Service Corps duty officer accomplishes the mission planning for the next day's mission based upon the information that is contained on these 6 status boards. After this is accomplished, the flight itineraries are given to the flight clinical coordinator, a qualified flight nurse, who reviews the itineraries for any special patient requirement or medical restrictions.
The C9 is the only airplane ever designed specifically for aeromedical evacuation. It can carry 30 to 40 stretcher patients, more than 40 ambulatory patients, or a combination of both, together with 2 specially trained flight nurses and 3 aeromedical technicians. Most of the patients are ambulatory, and many times they're permitted to have a family member accompany them to their destination hospital.
The mission, as today, starts off to Fort Leonard Wood Army Airfield. From Forney, we're going to go on into Kansas City, one of the bigger international airports. From there through Salina, Kansas, on out towards Buckley, Denver, Colorado area. And from there back on up through Offutt, down to Forbes Air Force Base, and then into Fort Leonard Wood again for the second time in the afternoon, and then back into Scott. That'll be the full mission. And it's going to take us approximately 14 hours from the time we start our briefing until the time we land to complete this mission.
Probably one of the major problems I have with the patients that we carry on board the 9 is the fact that they are afraid of flying. And many times the disease process or the injury that they have to their body is second most in their mind. They're more concerned with whether they're going to get from point A to point B safely and comfortably. I believe all members of the AirVac system do look at each patient as an individual person to be taken care of as best as possible. The crew never seems to be too tired to make an extra effort for the patient that we're carrying or their family.
Today on the mission, we have been briefed that we will have some patients that have difficulties with hypertension, and thus I will be monitoring their blood pressure and pulse and respiration throughout the flight to make sure that they are not being harmed in any way by our patient movement procedures.
We like to feel that the care that the patients receive while they're on the aircraft is comparable to the treatment that they receive while they're in a fixed medical facility. We have the necessary equipment on board to care for these patients. We like to feel that the patients are patients and they receive the best possible treatment and care that can be offered.
The ability to be able to move somebody on an urgent mission, such as a heart problem or a burn victim or a small baby, and be able to save their life because of the medium of air transportation, has really given me a lot of joy and probably a lot of satisfaction, a lot more than I've ever received in anything else I've done in my career since I've been in the Air Force.
Aeromedical evacuation has come a long way since its inception during the early days of flight. Today, within a matter of hours, the C9 can deliver a patient to some of the best medical facilities available anywhere. Another example of the Air Force taking care of its own.
This cold front will be passing through Southern California in the next 18 hours with improving conditions thereafter.
Thank you. A weather briefing is one of the most important things a crew needs before departing on a mission. The information we obtain here helps us to determine a safe route of flight and tells us what to expect along each leg of our flight and at our destination. Our next story is about people who also forecast the weather. Only the guys you'll be seeing don't work in a place like this. Their office can be just about anywhere.
Once you leave the aircraft, especially when the chute pulls off your back and you get the opening shock of it opening, and you look up, it's a beautiful sight to see a canopy above your head, because then it's the worst part's over. Landing is, takeoffs are optional, but landings are mandatory.
We're what is known as the Unconventional Warfare Weather Team. We support the airborne forces in Europe, and our primary mission is to provide 2nd Weather Wing the capability of deploying personnel into any part of the EUCOM theater, if necessary, by means of parachute. I'm Captain Will Higley. This is Sergeant Butch Roberts, Sergeant Jerry Rugg. We're assigned to OLC 7th Weather Squadron at Bad Pulse, Germany. Right now, there are only 3 units in Air Weather Service that have parachute-qualified people.
We provide forecast support for airborne operations, for flights, specialized support to the commander that he may need for planning purposes, services which range from observations on the local Army airfield to climatology data for particular team missions that a Special Forces team may be going on, climatic surveys for some of the mountainous areas here for exercises that are being planned, and then we have specialized teams which require a very unique form of data, and we try to assimilate all this into a digestible form for the Special Forces personnel, something that's not totally couched in the terms of a meteorologist or a weatherman, but something that the average military person can understand and utilize in a specialty.
Once we are on the ground, depending on what mission you're tasked to do, if you're one of the first people in, you may be tasked to set up the DZ, the drop zone itself, by putting up a balloon to catch an effective wind and effective drift so you can put the panels where the aircraft will fly and release over. If you're just on a long-term exercise type thing, and once in the field, you become a part of the unit that you're supporting, whether it be the Army Special Forces or a different Army unit, whether it be back in the States with the 82nd Airborne Division or up in northern Germany with an Armored Division. You become part of that unit as a functional part. You'll take the observations, you support the headquarters, you support the people that need the weather, and at the same time you're expected to pull your own weight around the camp.
When they're inserted into the field with the team, they will not come out of the field until that team comes out of the field, completing their mission. So aside from doing their normal duties of getting the weather, in addition, they have to survive with that team in the field. If that team goes on combat missions, they're going to have to be able to defend themselves with that team. They're going to have to be integrated fully with that team in whatever they do. And for this, of course, this requires a little extra of the man than what would normally be required from a weather observer.
We expect that anyone attached to a Special Forces unit, to include the Air Force weather team, to be able to do anything physically that we can do. If we took someone along on a mission or committed someone into an operational area, they could not physically stay with the team, then they would jeopardize the mission that they're committed to. And I think I can say for the team here, they work just as hard as we do at staying ready to go.
I spend a considerable amount of time jogging and in PT because other than personally enjoying it, it gives me a chance to get out, see quite a bit of the countryside. We've got trails that wind in and out of the forest areas, villages that look like something out of a postcard, out of picture books. Tremendously beautiful area. In addition to enjoying the running and to using it as a mental cleansing function, it leads into the PT program that we have here to maintain our ability to deploy with the Special Forces and to maintain our general physical condition so that we are capable of worldwide deployment.
They support us on our drops. They're always ready whenever we need them.
The C-141 has been the workhorse of MAC for over a decade now, and it has proven itself to be one of the safest, most reliable aircraft the Air Force has ever had. But before it was accepted into the inventory, it went through a period of extensive testing at Edwards Air Force Base, California. Through the years, Edwards has seen most of the planes that have made it into Air Force service, and many that haven't. We'd like to take you back now a short step in history to when Edwards was mostly blowing sand and empty desert.
It was 1910 when the Coram family first settled this vast, desolate area of California. Located near Rodriguez Dry Lake, it was so isolated that early homesteaders like the Corams were given special consideration by the government just to get them to move here. The Corams called this settlement Muroc, a reverse spelling of the Coram family name. From this, a community began to grow. The flat, dry lake beds surrounding Muroc were ideal for auto racing, and some of the earliest speed trials were held there. In 1933, the Army Air Corps Bombing and Gunnery Range was established at what was then called Muroc Field. Soon after, Colonel Hap Arnold, commander at Marchfield, California, sent his planes here for maneuvers. On May 11, 1937, the entire Army Air Corps, 200 planes strong, participated in war games at Muroc Field. The U.S. had entered World War II. The Muroc Maru, a mock Japanese cruiser, was built to prepare crews for anti-shipping raids. Meanwhile, preparations were being made for the flight of our first jet, the XP-59, which took place on October 1st, 1942. The jet age had begun. In 1947, Captain Chuck Yeager broke the sound barrier in the Bell X-1 rocket plane.
1, 2, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, rock. 5, 6, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, rock. 9, 10, 11 o'clock.
The YB-49 Flying Wing. In 1948, one crashed, killing all 5 crewmen, among them Captain Glenn W. Edwards. And on January 27, 1950, Muroc Field was renamed Edwards Air Force Base. In 1951, the Test Pilot School and the Air Force Flight Test Center were established.
When the chimes ring 5, 6, and 7, we'll be right in 7th heaven. We're gonna rock around the clock tonight. We're gonna rock till broad daylight. We're gonna rock around the clock tonight.
Edwards has 350 days a year flying weather, and the 65 square miles of surrounding lake bed provides natural landing fields for experimental aircraft and those with in-flight emergencies. In addition, its 307,000 acres provides space for a variety of test-related functions, including sled tests, designed to evaluate various aircraft components and ejection systems. The X Series, a long line of research vehicles, among them the X-15. Helicopters and other aircraft having vertical takeoff and landing capabilities are also evaluated at Edwards. Even the Army's aviation engineering flight activity gets involved with some of its new and modified aircraft.
Taking the easy way out. Got a good reason for taking the easy way out now. It was a day tripper, a one-way ticket kept. It took me so long to find out, and I found out.
The XB-70 triple sonic bomber was one of the major test programs at Edwards. Another test was the YF-12, forerunner of the SR-71. The swing-wing F-111 with its terrain-following feature. And the C-5. The Air Force Rocket Propulsion Laboratory at Edwards develops and tests new and modified systems and frequently works with NASA and other federal agencies. The 70s have seen tremendous advances in close air support aircraft, like the A-10. And sophisticated high-performance fighter aircraft. B-1 testing, which will benefit new bomber studies, and the Space Shuttle, which will provide the nation with a series of reusable space vehicles. Edwards Air Force Base, witnessing flight from its earliest days and playing a major role in the development of air power. These advances were the result of the courage, vision, and ingenuity of its men and women, qualities which will one day make space travel in ships like these a reality.